Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to discuss the possibility of Fetchland reprints in Standard, specifically in regards to the upcoming Zendikar set. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't that over a year away? Yeah, it is. That is that far in the future. And yet, this is a subject that keeps coming up time and again. So I figured, you know what? Let's evaluate the possibility. Let's go over the for and against arguments for Fetchlands and see if we can come up with a reasonable idea of whether they're going to be coming back or not. So, for those of you who don't know exactly what I'm talking about when I say Fetchlands, there are a set of lands in Magic the Gathering. There's one for every 2-color combination. So, one for red-blue, one for black-green, all of that goodness. They all operate the exact same way. You tap them, you pay 1 life, you sacrifice the land, and then you get to go and search through your deck for either color that the deck is aligned with in terms of land. So if you have a red-blue one, it will let you search for a mountain or an island. Now it's important to note that these don't specify basic island or mountain. So if you're familiar with the current Standard environment, obviously you know all about the shocklands. Well, the shocklands count as particular land types, right? If you have a red-blue shockland, it actually counts as a mountain and an island. So Fetchlands can go and acquire those lands. They all, as a side note, they can also acquire the new lands that they've created specifically in Throne of Eldraine. You'll notice that you've got like the Witch's Cottage, I believe it's called, which counts as a swamp, and they have things like that. So you would also be able to search those up. Now, these Fetchlands are a massive factor in the modern format. They are essentially the most important lands in all of moderndom. And as a result, they have a nice price tag attached to them. And everybody wants these cards. These being printed in a set is very good for that set. So there's a reason why everybody is speculating, oh, hey, are we getting Fetchlands back? It's something that comes up time and time again. But with Zendikar, they actually had Fetchlands in Zendikar and even special expedition Fetchlands, right? So Zendikar has a history of having Fetchlands in it from the very beginning. So as soon as you hear Return to Zendikar coming as one of the next 4 sets down the line, people start to go, ooh, Fetchlands. Maybe they'll reprint Fetchlands. I think they're going to bring back Fetchlands. It would be a great way to sell the set. And obviously people are super stoked about Fetchlands. Now, there are some arguments for and some arguments against why this would be a reasonable thing to expect. Thinking that they would follow along the concept of Zendikar, some people are saying, look, Zendikar is where these Fetchlands first showed up, so it makes sense that we'll see these not originally in Magic, right? You have the Onslaught block where the fetches first showed up with allied colored fetches. The Zendikar block is where enemy color fetches showed up. So by that logic, Zendikar has the ability to have any of the fetches in it. People are like, well, hey, you know what? Maybe they'll reprint them. The last time they reprinted the fetches in a Standard set was the Khans of Tarkir block, and that was a while back. So they have the lands have slowly crept upwards in value, or maybe not so slowly. You know, Modern is a pretty expensive format, let's be honest. So the argument is, look, Zendikar is coming back. Hey, we can get fetches in it. And that does make sense. I understand the underlying logic. Wizards does like to revisit concepts in the same world where it makes sense. Look at Shocklands, for example. Those were specifically brought in the Ravnica block, and they had each time they went back to the Ravnica block, they brought Shocklands back, and that's why we have Shocklands right now in Standard. And you can see that it's created a situation where with the lands that are available, people are able to play 4 or 5 color decks. I mean, the Golos deck, for example, right now in Standard, the Golos deck is tearing it up, and that relies on being a 5-color deck with all kinds of different things reaching here and there for lands. But regardless, we're gonna stick to talking about the Fetchlands here. We're not gonna shake our fists at Golos. Golos defeated me, guys, in that win 12 games, get yourself the sweet prize. Golos laid the beats down to my green-black adventure deck, so curse you, Golos! Anyways, Fetchlands originally, you know, they showed up, the enemy colors showed up in Zendikar, so I get where people are coming from in that regard. It's also been a fair bit of time since we've seen a reprint of these, and it would help to boost pack sales. Anytime there's a set with Fetchlands in it, it helps sell packs. Khans of Tarkir, totally, that block got its sales pushed by having these Fetchlands included. It made a big impact in terms of people wanting to pick this up, and in all honesty, Khans of Tarkir might have been a soft selling set if it wasn't for shoving those lands in there. Khans of Tarkir wasn't the most powerful set. So having the Fetchlands in there, it goosed sales numbers, right? Having your ability to grab up cards that are going to be staples for Modern and are never going to go anywhere is sweet. But there is also something you need to bear in mind. Yes, it did help push Khans of Tarkir's sales, but at the same time, it had a depressive value, a depressive effect, I should say, on the value of the Fetchlands. So the Fetchlands that were in Khans of Tarkir at one point dipped down to being an $8 or $9 rare. And for a Fetchland, that is insanely low. Now that's good from a consumer perspective. I mean, hey, if you're someone who wants to acquire your cards cheap, low card prices are a good thing for you. But from Wizards' perspective, and we'll touch on this more a little further in the video, from Wizards' perspective, this is not an ideal scenario for them. So the whole cons, like, hey, look, they did it in cons and it helped with sales, is an argument for and against the Fetchlands. So it falls into both categories. Now, the Fetchlands have one particular problem that a lot of people don't seem to address, and that Wizards is actively trying to avoid in Standard. Not 100%, but they are avoiding it overall, and that is search effects. We do have a certain number of search effects, but back in the day we used to have, they're called tutoring effects, right? Based on demonic tutor. So back in the day we used to have a ton of tutoring effects where you search things up and whatever, and it's fine on a particular card here or there. You've got that like Nissus Triumph where you can search for 2 forests, and you got the Growth Chamber Guardian, but those aren't like ubiquitous. You're not going to see those in every deck across the board. Shock lands you are going to see in every deck across the board. So when it came to the Khans of Tarkir block, everybody was playing with Fetchlands. Like, everybody had Fetchlands packed into their deck. Even if you're playing a mono-color deck, if you're playing a straight, like if you're playing mono green or whatever, it may still be in your best interest to put these Fetchlands in, because they will reduce the chance that you will draw lands in the future, right? Like, basically, you put one of these out, you sacrifice it to go get a land, put that land out. Now there are fewer lands left in your deck, which gives you a greater chance of drawing non-land cards. It also gives you ability to change what's on the top of your deck. When you go, okay, I scried top of my deck, boom, I'll sacrifice my Fetchland, shuffle my deck. Now I have a new chance of getting something different on top of my deck. Now, when you have a deck where you have, let's say, 14, 16 of these Fetchlands, that's a lot of sacking and shuffling. That's a lot of time essentially wasted, where you're sitting there going, okay, he's doing it again. Okay, I'm doing it again. Like, it turns Standard into Shufflerd instead. You just sit there forever while everybody's shuffle, 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 shuffle. And on that note too, Arena has a hard time with tutor effects as well. I believe it's not just the time-consuming nature of tutors that has caused this shift in Magic the Gathering, but also Arena as well. The programming of Arena is designed in such a way that the game seems to lock up when you have to tutor for cards, especially more than one card. It is a point of frustration. So as a result, Wizards of the Coast has moved more towards impulse style effects. And if you know the old school vision spell impulse, you know what I'm talking about. But the idea behind impulse spells is, instead of letting you search through your whole deck, we're going to let you look at the top X cards of your deck. So, for example, Once Upon a Time, right, that new green spell, it lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and pick a land or a creature. Those are the effects that Wizards of the Coast is leaning more towards. Now, yes, we do have the fabled search land that does exist, so they're not going to completely ignore this, because tutoring is a nice thing to do, but they have moved away from it, trying not to let Standard get too bogged down with time-consuming nonsense. Look at the banning for Nexus of Fate. It was only really banned in Best of 1 on Arena, and that was because it caused boring gameplay. And basically the audience watching it on Twitch would be like, okay, this is super dull to watch. A whole bunch of tutoring from fetches is going to have a similar effect, in my opinion, where it's just going to be like, oh my god, all I do is watch people crack lands, wait for the game while it locks up after they've picked one land. Like, the more you have to tutor, the worse things get in terms of just how time-consuming arena games can be. So I do also believe that is something that's going to be factored in, but I think that's more of a minimal thing. I think overall, just the effect on standard of making it insanely time-consuming. Also, another thing about Fetchlands in standard is that it makes it too easy to play all the colors. Part of Magic balancing is the idea of certain colors can do certain things. You'll get certain types of archetypes based on different concepts, right? Your red rush, your white-blue control. Well, once you open the field up to too many colors, you'll see what we're seeing now with, again, Golos, where you have too easy access to all of the colors. And that is not an ideal scenario. Now, granted, the Shocklands, if they did come, not Shocklands, sorry, the Fetchlands, if they did come in the Zendikar set, that would be when all of the Shocklands were rotating. So you wouldn't have that overlap. So there is somewhat of an argument to be made that it wouldn't be quite as easy. If they don't have any dual lands that have basic land types attached to them, like if you take a look at the temples, for example, right now that you scry, those don't have basic land types attached to them. So they're not, like the green-blue one isn't considered a forest island. You wouldn't be able to search that up with a fetch land. So there is an argument to be made that if up until the point of Zendikar coming out, they don't release any dual lands that actually have basic lands types, there's a higher chance that they will put the fetch lands into the Zendikar set. Now, overall, I don't believe that the fetch lands are going to ever get reprinted in standard again. And that has to do with what I see as Wizards' new philosophy in terms of value cards. There are certain cards that are too valuable for them to print in standard. Why would they print fetch lands in standard and watch the price tank, as well as making standard a shuffle heavy, all the other things that I mentioned? Why would they print the fetch lands in standard when they can instead put them into a side product, right? You can go, okay, Modern Horizons. They bring out the next Modern Horizons. If they put fetch lands in that, nobody's going to blink at the double cost of the price, because Modern Horizons is a set that costs twice as much as regular sets, right? In fact, if they put the fetches in there, they could probably inch the price of the pack up by a couple bucks as well. They could move it back up to the full-on master levels, where you're paying, instead of $7 a pack, you're paying $10 a pack, and people would do it trying to get these fetch lands. Now, there's also it's being put forth that, okay, maybe they won't print regular fetches, but they'll put like special expedition fetches in your regular booster packs. Those days, the days of the masterpieces and regular booster packs are over as far as I'm concerned. We saw a diminishing return effects with this in the past, where they came out with the expedition lands, the invocations, the masterpieces, whatever you want to call them. They had different names for different sets. And they went over very well at first. They were high value cards. They were your mega lottery ticket cards, where when you hit one, you're like, woo, baby, I just got mega bank. But as they included them set after set, overall it depressed the value of the entire set of invocations. And then you would notice that they brought out the mythic editions, right? And when they brought out mythic editions, what did they call the 8 planeswalkers that came along with them? Masterpieces. So as far as I'm concerned, any of these special edition versions of things like that, then special extra super duper now, will only be coming to us in these mega expensive editions. I don't see them turning around and going, okay, we'll put regular fetches in regular packs and create collector's edition packs where you can get special souped up fetches, when there's more money on the table for them by putting fetches in a more expensive product. The advantage of putting more expensive cards that are currently more expensive on the secondary market, into more expensive products, is that you maintain the baseline value. So if a fetch would normally drop down to, I'm just going to make up some numbers for an example. Let's say a fetch is $30, okay? Let's say putting that fetch into a standard set would drive it down to, at its lowest point, $9. Somewhere, we're going to go like the 9 to 15 range, right? Well, if you put this $30 fetch into a set that costs twice as much, you've basically now doubled the baseline value that it can drop to as well. So now instead of having your Fetchlands go down from 30, they go down from 30 to 9, they go from 30 to 20. And that is a significant difference. The cards maintain value, and as a result, you have the ability to reprint them again at a higher value. Because what'll happen is, if it drops down to $9, it takes way longer for it to climb back up to $30. But if it drops down to only $20 in a set that's more expensive, and thus fewer people can afford it, fewer packs get cracked, fewer copies come back out into the wild, into the market, then it has less of an effect of decreasing, and it'll return to that point or even grow higher depending on demand. So for me, going forwards, we will only see Fetchlands showing up in Modern Horizon style sets and other side products that have a higher price tag. I genuinely do not believe that there's any reason to reasonably expect that they will put Fetchlands in to a standard set. Wizards has signaled that I did a video talking about how Magic is getting more expensive, right? Or how it's about to get a lot more expensive. And in that, I go over the 3 phases of Magic's history in my eyes. And the 3rd phase that we're in right now is where Wizards is pushing as hard as they can in every direction for the maximum amount of money. And they illustrated with the master sets that they are very much aware of the secondary market. They are very much aware of secondary market prices, and they're keen on maintaining those secondary market prices as high as possible, because it makes the cards that are high value super attractive when you reprint them. So that's the idea. I genuinely cannot see them reprinting the fetches in standard. That being said, there may be issues that I have not considered. I am interested to hear your opinions on this matter, so let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate all of you coming by to hear me out and share your thoughts, and I will see all of you here tomorrow.